there are 750,000 students every year from India which are going to study abroad.
Based on that, our algorithm will analyze your preferences and recommend you the top study options, usually the top 3 study options in your chosen destination. So that can be the Netherlands, UK, or Australia currently, including sort of a detailed report on what you can expect at each university that you've been matched to based on what you've answered, including sort of a virtual tour of both the campus and the city around it. We have a very big demographic from India. I think 20% of all our student users are from India, and it's been growing also a lot in the past. I think there's, for Indian students, more and more are in a position to be able to afford a study. It's also getting more and more difficult for, specifically for students from India to be accepted or to also be granted a visa to study abroad. There's also seen a growth of fraudulent practices or unethical practices by study agents who maybe don't always provide the right information to the student.
Hello everyone, welcome to Staying Indian. So we are doing podcast today with Kasper Baars, who is founder of Discov.Ai. Now, there are 750,000 students every year from India which are going to study abroad.
Okay,
so every year, these students spend $85 billion in studies in countries like China, US, Singapore, UK, and there are a lot of emerging markets as well. So Discov does the matching of students who are trying to find universities. It can be a tough job in these countries. So we'll hear more about it. Kasper, welcome first of all.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so it's a pleasure to be here.
So Kasper, you originally come from Belgium and have done your studying in Netherlands as well. So you are a student who did his studies abroad as well. So based on your personal knowledge and personal experience, you dwelled into entrepreneurship. So can you shed some light on how this kind of a company become into existence?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it was very much shared or based on my own experience as an international student. So I did my international baccalaureate when I was 16. I had been going to high school in Belgium, but I was really sort of eager to get some more international experience. I wanted to learn English. I wanted to broaden my horizons, so to speak. So I went to pursue an IB diploma in Eswatini. Back then it was called Swaziland in Southern Africa. And where I also met my co-founder Rohan, but back then we were early friends. And I really had the ambition after finishing my IB to study abroad. And for me, actually, I really wanted to study in the UK. It being well ranked, known for its for academic reputation. So I really wanted to go there. But in the first place, I had to figure out exactly what it was I wanted to study. But very much in the second place, it was also once I figured that one out. What my actual, what university would be the best match for me. And I remember back then you already had booking.com. And if you wanted to book a hotel somewhere, you could go booking.com, you can check out hotels, you can read reviews, you can check out everything there is on the location. But when you actually want to go study somewhere for 3 or 4 years, there was actually really nothing like that. And the only information I had to go on was what was written on the university website, which was typically not that much more than this is what you're going to study, this is what it starts, this is what it costs. And this is how long it will take. So yeah, I was very lucky to end up in Manchester University. And I was very lucky that it was actually a really good fit for me, both in terms of the location, the city, the university, the facilities, the people, the student life. Like it just really matched me and I had a really good time. But I realized that a lot of fellow international students, especially coming from a little bit further, I mean, I'd at least been to the UK before, being from Belgium, it's not that far. But students who would come from the first time ever to the UK actually had no idea what to expect. And unfortunately, a lot of my fellow study colleagues, their expectations didn't always meet reality. So a lot of them, it felt like a leap of faith and they couldn't really form a picture before going to university based on the information that was out there. So they, in the worst case, that led to sort of transfers or sometimes dropouts, or especially students coming from outside the EU at that time who were paying, twice as many fees as I was paying, decided to finish it because they're too much invested in it and decided to stick it to the end, with all the problems and challenges and mental health issues that came as a result. So I guess that was the inspiration for building the Discov, to really help students with their study orientation, really helping them find the best university match for them, not just based on the program and academics, but based on the holistic student experience, personality, budget, lifestyle, to make sure students really go to university that meets all their needs, and also universities really receive students that can do well and thrive.
No, definitely. And that is, I think, a kind of a bang on in terms of identifying the problem and creating a solution for it, right? And you also mentioned your co-founder, Rohan. So I would like to mention that he was also supposed to be part of this podcast, but unfortunately, he's not feeling well, and we wish him well. But can you tell us, Casper, how, in terms of the questions that generally students ask about on your platform, or what the product is about? Is it like self-discovering, or you provide one-to-one consultations?
Yeah, so maybe a little bit about how exactly the our solution works. So it is completely free for students. So if you're listening, I'll definitely, you're interested in maybe studying abroad, I'll definitely recommend to check it out. But we have sort of two elements to let's say the orientation process. So one is really the university orientation. So we have a platform, Discov.Ai, where students will come onto, and the first step they'll undertake is to answer what we call a needs assessment. And in this needs assessment, you will filter out your academic preferences. So in terms of what you're interested in studying, but also what you find important in your study. What sort of career ambitions do you have? Are you looking for an academic or more professionally oriented study? Are you an independent learner, or do you like to work in groups and be close to teachers and staff? Secondly, we also look at your non-academic interests, such as sports, arts and culture, nightlife options. Also the type of environment that you're looking to study in. Is that sort of like do you prefer to be part of a big city or more rural campus-based university and those kind of tight-knit communities that you have over there? Also looking at your budgets, not just for tuition fees, but also for the general cost of living. If you're going to study in Amsterdam compared to, Maastricht in the Netherlands, for example, or London compared to Manchester, your cost of living is going to look very different. So we want to take that into account as well. And finally, we look at your diversity preferences. So how important you value diversity and the level of internationalization within both the classroom, but also the wider city around it. Based on that, our algorithm will analyze your preferences and recommend you the top study options, usually the top 3 study options in your chosen destination. So that can be the Netherlands, UK, or Australia currently, including sort of a detailed report on what you can expect at each university that you've been matched to based on what you've answered, including sort of a virtual tour of both the campus and the city around it. So this is completely online, automated, digital, and students have full control over that whole process and can orientate these study options themselves. And indeed, we have a second part of the service where we have a team of digital study counselors. That's, let's say, when you're ready, or when you receive your study advice and you have a few more questions about your course or your university, or about specifically the application process and getting to being accepted. Essentially, we have a team of digital study counselors that will help you answer these questions and also assist you in the application. So I would say, typically, we have a very big demographic from India. I think 20% of all our student users are from India, and it's been growing also a lot in the past. So I know a lot of Indian students are very, we get a lot of questions around sort of academic outcomes, like what will their degree allow them to do like after that, or what are their options, for example, once they finish. What are the work, like the post-study work options in different countries when they get their degree. Also being able to work alongside their studies, like what are their options there. Definitely a lot of questions around that, let's say the career and work aspect. Also around, let's say, academics requirements, like being able to be accepted, or what sort of qualifications they need to be accepted. But also on the non-academic elements, we get a lot of questions around, will I fit in? Will I, is there a high tolerance towards people from abroad, or people from specifically from India, for example? So we also noticed there's also, which makes sense, it's a big jump, it's a big leap, and it's a very different culture. So we also get a lot of questions around what is my life actually going to look like once I arrive. So yeah, that's quite interesting to see.
Yeah. So I think it's a very kind of defined and robust platform in terms of finding the right fit. And as you said, 20% of your demographic is from India, and this platform is also called Staying Indian. So if you are an Indian and if you're looking to study abroad, definitely check this platform out. It will help you. I did some research before, recording this podcast, and found out that there would be around 2 million students by next year who would be from India studying abroad. And each of them would be spending around $65,000 a year. That amounts to 50 lakhs in Indian rupees. That is a substantial amount, right? And a lot of planning would go into it if you are taking that kind of a risk in terms of your career and opportunity. So can you tell us, how does one go about his financial planning, and what are the factors that one should weigh in while taking that decision?
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. I think that the first thing to consider is, because as you said, it is an education abroad. It is a huge investment. I think it's a great thing. It will definitely open a lot of doors, offer a lot of opportunities. But yeah, fully agree that this is a choice you need to make very carefully. But yeah, of course, you also it comes at a serious investment. I think in the UK, your average undergraduate degree will be somewhere between 20 and 30,000 pounds per year. In the US, that already is looking like between 40 and $60,000 per year. Australia also similar to the UK. But there are also study destinations where you can get an international, reputable education for a much lower cost. The Netherlands is actually the country where we started. I think is a very good option for students who maybe don't have that kind of budget to be able to study abroad, because you can already start courses. Tuition fees already start from 10,000 euros per year, which is significantly cheaper than some of the fees that you'll be paying in sort of the more traditional study destinations. But also countries like Denmark, Finland are also increasing their international English taught offer. Of Belgium, there are also more and more options for international students in there. Also, tuition fees are considered. Germany, where you in a lot of cases can even study for free or at a very low cost, are also definitely options to consider, and can also really provide a really good quality education as well. I think secondly, also once you start planning for once you have maybe found your university match or the program that you want to study, also really recommend looking at scholarship options. Some you have scholarship options either from the university itself or from more national government run programs. I think it's good to start considering this early, because the more for university to grant you a scholarship, the things that they look at is your academic excellence, of course, but also extracurricular activities, initiatives that you take, leadership that you can show. So these are all things that it's a profile you have to start building as soon as possible. If you know you're going to study, for example, next year or in 2 years, start thinking about those things. Start looking at what are the requirements for scholarship, or what are the things they evaluate, and start working towards that, because it actually gives you the time to prepare and be a viable candidate to receive a scholarship as well.
Nice. So, Kasper, if we take some live examples of some students that have come to a platform and you're being able to assist them and get them placed in some of the universities, what would be some success stories around it?
Yeah, so I guess also maybe the way we measure success is, of course, in the first place, if we can successfully help a student find and apply and get accepted into their dream university, like that's point one. Secondly, the second, I guess, success metric we really look at to evaluate whether we've done our jobs right is a student still happy? Are they actually enjoying their study experience there? So we have several success stories like that, where we're able to help students sort of grab that opportunity and overcome their fears that might come with such a big step, right? But secondly, also, I think for a lot of, maybe in a lot of countries, especially in Asia, again in Africa as well, Latin America, a lot of students will, or typically how a lot of students actually end up studying abroad is by using educational consultants or study agents, which can often deliver a really good service, but they're not always, they work on a commission model or commission contract with several specific universities. So what they tend to do, or what they tend to incentivize to do, is to send students usually to a handful of universities that they work with, which does not always represent the student's best interest. So we've had also several students who had been using educational consultant before, then stumbled across our platform and ended up deciding something very different than what they were originally advised. And also then hearing those success stories of them actually arriving there, and finding that it was so much more of a better fit than what had originally been advised. That was also really testament to what we're actually trying to do here for students. So yeah, there's quite a few of those stories already. Yeah.
Nice. That's good to hear. And apart from what you mentioned, going through some student program where they are inclined towards sending students to only a few universities, what are the other benefits your platform offers in terms of, let's say, virtually doing a tour, or interacting with other students who have already studied there? What are other features?
Yeah. So I think in the very first place, what makes us quite unique, at least in the model that we use, or the way that we actually, because of course we work with both universities and students. It's free for students, but we do work with universities as our customers, because through our platform, we do actually help them also bring in students that also have the right fit with the university, are likely to do well, graduate on time, and that's beneficial for the university as well in terms of their reputation and the study experience they have for students, and the subsidies that they get and everything like that. So I think one quite unique thing about how we operate our platform is that we're completely unbiased, both in terms of how we advise students. We really only use independent sources of data and information based on student reviews, based on crowdsourced data on things like the cost of living or specific facilities that are out there for specific sports or any extracurricular interests you might have. Also looking at independent rankings, subject rankings, everything like that. So where we can, we really rely on these independent sources and not the university's own information or anything that is more subjective. So I think that's where we can really make a difference, because we can really offer a comparable, objective comparison of different study options. Secondly, we, as I used the example before, even though we work with some universities as our customers, we do also have example in the Netherlands. We have every university that you can study in English, whether bachelor or master or an academic or professionally oriented degree is in our platform, whether we work with them or not. So you will know that you'll really get the best study options for you. So it's all done by the selections done by an algorithm. Whether who we work with or not work with is not going to influence the advice that we give you. And that's something that is very different to, let's say, the commission model that a lot of, let's say, the educational consultants out there might use. So I think those are, I guess we always built it as a student-centric solution in the first place before trying to answer the university's problems. And I believe in the industry has been changing a lot, or has been primarily built to answer the university's goals, to bring in as many students as possible, instead of really looking out for students and helping them really find the best study options for their interest.
Yeah, amazing. And especially because you have been a student yourself and you have faced similar issues, you will be able to create and understand what kind of problems students face, right? So you'll be able to create a better solution for it. So amazing. So Kasper, can you also tell what are some of the common mistakes that you've seen students making while applying for the universities or while selecting the courses?
Yeah, I think one of the common sort of pitfalls or common mistakes you might say is that a lot of students, they tend to focus what we see a little bit too much on, let's say, global rankings. Well, of course, it's important to consider, and of course, it does give some indication of how well how rigorous certain academic standards and things like that are. It definitely doesn't paint the whole picture. It's good to keep in mind that things like Times Higher Education, global rankings, also universities aren't one institution, right? They're consisting of different departments, different faculties, different courses, with each different facilities, different strengths that they will be good at. So global rankings doesn't take into account these sort of nuances. Some universities will be very strong on their business and economics. Other universities will be very strong on their social sciences, for example. If you take the US, if you want to study engineering, then MIT might be a really good option for you. If you want to study business, maybe even though MIT might be very highly ranked, might not be the best university to study business. So I think that's really good to keep in mind, not just academic ranking, but really, what are you trying to get out of your university experience? What are you trying to take away from it, both in terms of the academics in the program, but also your career outcomes and also your student life, right? You want to have a good time. You want to feel at home. You want to make friends. You want to develop yourself also, not just intellectually, but also socially, ethically. So it's good to keep in mind, those sort of factors as well. I really do your research on the university, but also the university culture and the city and the sort of wider environment around that as well. Then I think when it comes to applying, it's very good to, like I said before, if you start having an idea, start your university orientation as early as possible. Don't wait till you graduate, ideally from high school, or if you're doing a master's from your bachelor's. Try to have an idea or at least some options already in mind and work towards that. Like the worst thing is that you end up graduating from high school, you want to study, let's say, an engineering course, but you didn't do the subjects that you had to take in order to be eligible for the engineering course, right? So start as early as possible, keep in mind your study options and start building your profile towards that. And the same goes for scholarships. If you think you need a scholarship, start building your profile in a way that you're going to be an interesting candidate to be given a scholarship too. And I think finally, apply on time. Don't wait till the last minute. A lot of courses, especially the more popular courses in things like medicine, psychology, that they usually have a bit more selective criteria or early deadlines. And in some, especially those more competitive courses, it's often a first come, first served basis. So the earlier you apply, the better in general your chances will be to be accepted at your dream university.
No, definitely that totally makes sense. And what are some of the trends that you see changing in recent times from Indian student market or study market in recent times?
Yeah, I think on the very first level, it's definitely booming. I think there's for Indian students, more and more are in a position to be able to afford a study abroad. Also with the growing economy, growing middle class, it's obviously providing more and more opportunities, which is obviously a really great thing. On the other hand, what we do see as a trend is that it's also getting more and more difficult for specifically for students from India to be accepted or to also be granted a visa to study abroad. So there is more and more regulations coming to. They're primarily what they're targeting is also fraudulent practices when it comes to international student recruitment. So, like I mentioned before, the recruitment of students for universities is a really big market, and there's a lot of money being made by educational consultants to bring in students to the universities that they work with. So it's really good to also keep that in mind when you're going to get, if you choose to work with an educational consultant, keep in mind that they will get paid a sum of money from the university that they're sending you to. So it's always good to be critical and aware of that fact. But yeah, because of this system also, and because of the commission model on enrollments, unfortunately, there's also seen a growth of fraudulent practices or unethical practices by study agents who maybe don't always provide the right information to the student or to the immigration service or the university in order to make their profile more interesting so that they might get accepted. Also, there's been a sort of an issue around students being sent to one university, but then transferring to another university once they're in the country, or educational consultants who are using also this education route to actually help students abroad to come to, not to actually study there, but mainly to work there, and who might not actually show up to the course as well. So unfortunately, because of these practices, there's been more and more backlash and regulations coming, and it's been harder and harder for visas to get approved. That's why it's always that's I think that's an unfortunate thing that is happening in the market. That's why I think there is a need for also more transparency in this industry. There's also a need for more commitment to the actual students' interests to prevent these kind of practices as well. But yeah, I think it's still still a lot of opportunities, regardless of that, for Indian students to study abroad. And I would definitely encourage students to also do their research, but also to be aware and critical of the help you might be seeking to secure your place in a university in another country.
No, definitely, Kasper. And I think one of the points that I'd like to add here is to also watch out for the economic trends of a particular country that you're going to study into, because that's the job market that you will be landing into. So you can do some research on how the job market is going, whether it's kind of booming, or what kind of job you will be eventually able to land, so that the return on your investment in terms of this higher education is much sooner than later. But yeah, so you also mentioned earlier scapegoating of students. What is that exactly?
I think it's a mix of anti-globalizing sort of forces, which are seeing more and more borders being protected. It's definitely, there is more and more pressure on, in general, things like migration, but it's often international education or international student mobility is often seen or categorized under the same vein, which I think is really unfortunate, because it's obviously something very different for students to pursue an education abroad than as a purely a migration route. Secondly, I think what's often forgotten is that students actually, international students, make a pretty sizable economic contribution to the economy of the country where they study at, both in the tuition fees that they pay, but also in the money that they spend in the country and in the jobs, the economic contribution in terms of the jobs that they might be able to get after they study. So a lot of the problems around housing and jobs and social infrastructure, social security, stuff like that, are becoming more and more, rising more and more to the surface, becoming more and more vocal and more political in that sense. And I think, what's unfortunate is that international students are also now more and more being scapegoated, if we look at the Netherlands and the UK, for these problems, even though they represent a very tiny margin of the total sort of net migration numbers. And plus, actually they, like I mentioned before, they actually make quite a sizable economic contribution in that sense. In the Netherlands, I believe we now have 400,000 vacancies that they're unable to find people for, that are not getting filled. If you consider that for each, that's almost 80% of all international students that come here find a job within a year of graduating. I would say that's a perfect problem solution fit right there. But unfortunately, that is not how the narrative is really developing in here. So,
no, exactly, and I think I really love the sine wave graph. Everything I think comes in those cycles, wherein a few years earlier globalization was on top, and now I think you rightly mentioned decoupling of economies is something that the world is going through, and everybody for himself is the narrative, right? So it will not last, right? And then we're back again in terms of working as a community again. So that's kind of a trend that we are observing. But in terms of your platform itself, Discov, what lies in future for you? How are you progressing? What are you working on these days?
Yeah. So we're actually working on a few exciting developments actually. So in last November, we also launched a new and improved product. So what we had before is that we would give sort of personalized study advice to students in the form of a PDF report, in which we were mainly highlighting, let's say, the facts and figures of why a university was matching well, or which study options matched well, and based very much on the information that we had or the data that we had. Now we've actually improved it quite significantly, where students can actually get a study advice after submitting their preferences in real time, which is also a lot more visual. I think it's a lot more user-friendly to actually now navigate your study options and to see the study advice. And importantly, it's also interactive. So from the study advice or the match report that we provide, there's actually also direct call to actions to the website. We can also give a virtual of the university itself and the program. We can also give a virtual tour of both the university itself based on video and images, as well as the city around it. So I think it actually helps even better now to help students really orientate and also form a little bit of a visual, tangible picture of their study future. And it also allows them to directly connect with one of our digital study counselors via WhatsApp or by scheduling a video call. So also opening up more and more channels for students to actually talk to us in a way that suits their, let's say, time and availability. Also beyond that, we're definitely expanding also the university offer on our platform. So we started off in the Netherlands. Last year, we also added the UK. So we also have a UK matchmaker now. And as of 2 weeks ago, we also launched in Australia. And I think, Australia, I think, is also a very interesting study destination. Also, a lot of really good universities, really quality education that you can get there. And I think also in terms of the student life, I think there's a lot to offer there. So we're very excited to have added Australia now also as a study destination. And we're also in the process of adding more and more universities. We now have the initial 15 on there, but we're still growing this database as we grow further. So and that's after that, we're still for us, we're really looking to become a global platform. So that allows you to actually orientate your study options in other countries as well. The US and Canada are definitely in the pipeline to add those study destinations, but also more maybe lesser known, such as Denmark, Finland, I think are also very interesting options that we will be looking to add. So in Europe, Germany. There's a lot more in the pipeline in that sense.
Amazing. Good luck from Staying Indian family, and we wish you a lot of success in coming years. So anyone who is looking to study abroad, or thinks that whether he or she would be able to find a university abroad or not, do check out the platform Discov.Ai. And thanks, Kasper, for joining us. Thanks for sharing the knowledge, and we wish you all the success.
Thanks a lot, Gaurav. I really appreciate it.